Rick Sawyer now has a town manager's report.
Nobody stayed for.
Yes, nobody stays for the manager's report, but that's all right.
Not nobody, sorry.
I'm feeling insulted.
No, just to add to Mr. Hunter's appointment earlier, I did get an update that the Fire Academy had the town council meeting on large screen TV with over 50 executive fire officers watching your meeting. And
Now I'm glad I won the vote.
Now we'll see the results go up.
right, so that was a good moment.
Jennings will be very pleased.
Yes. And I think it was a nice moment for Chief Hunter as well, with all his colleagues there. So congratulations to him. So I do want to take a few moments to update the community and certainly the council on some changes in the PFAS issue that's been plaguing our community for the last several years. Since our last meeting, the state has come out with new proposed standards that will be before the Joint Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules tomorrow morning. Originally scheduled for 9 a.m., I've seen an update today that says, based on where their agenda is, that it likely won't be taken up till at least 10:30 in the morning. But this meeting is tomorrow. These new standards are much lower than anything we've seen or really even talked about in the past. You can see them on the screens, PFOA down to 12. And the rules that they had introduced back in January had it at 38, and this is parts per trillion. And the numbers that we were addressing with all of our residents up until this point in time has been 70 parts per trillion. So, and when we first heard of this, we were at 400 parts per trillion when we first heard of PFOA about 3 years ago. So you can see how far down the standard has gone. 12 parts per trillion is really 12 grains of sand in an Olympic-sized swimming pool is what we're talking about. So the state certainly has reduced these numbers significantly, and they've done a significant amount of study and also peer review work of other agencies and other states' work. And really a lot of their decisions came based on the state of Minnesota's work that just came out after their standards were introduced back in January, or proposed standards were introduced back in January. And again, this slide shows some of the impacts that these standards are in place to protect you from. So liver toxicity and altered lipid metabolism, suppressed immune response to vaccines, and reduced female fertility. And again, a lot of what the science that they've come up or studied over the last 6 months really has a much better understanding now of the transfer of these compounds through breast milk and through the placenta, and the impacts that it has on developing children, especially to the age of 1 year, and that the compounds really build up in small children, which is something we had heard about from residents and experts in the field that Vermont and others were taking into account with their standards, and the state really now believes the science is there to enforce these lower standards. But I do want to take us back a little bit to show how this does impact the community. This is the map that we were using a couple of years ago to show the different study areas. The original concern we had was the Merrimack Village Water District water that we get that feeds Greenfield Farms and Cabot Preserve. And then the St. Cobain study area, which was originally a mile, then grew to 1.5 miles, and then continued to grow into the community further and further based on the amount of chemicals that they were finding in our water. The Merrimack landfill, half-mile study area, and we do have residents in Bedford who are impacted by that landfill and have to be put on bottled water because of it, and I believe have since been put on treatment systems. There's no municipal water close enough to that. And then our own landfill, where we have found that we have over 70 parts per trillion in our monitoring wells. And up until now, our residents that are around that landfill did not meet the threshold, which were 70 parts per trillion that we were working towards. But we do have residents in that study area that have readings in the 40s and certainly in the teens as well, and many that have even lower than the 12 parts per trillion. But we do have some that will likely have to be addressed if these laws or regulations are put into place. Just going back to the state's water tests. So each one of these dots is a water test that has been done in Bedford. I know this doesn't really orientate you very well, but this is the Everett Turnpike, the Merrimack River, Route 101 cutting through the town. So this is the landfill up here. A red dot is a test that's over 70 parts per trillion. The green dots are essentially the safe counts at less than 10 parts per trillion. Yellow are between 10 and 45. So you can see there's a mixed match of those standards throughout. And what we had to address was this cluster of very high orange and reds down here, and then also along South River Road. Just going into a little more detail on those. So this is a map of Town of Bedford's water system. And the lighter color lines are the Manchester Water District lines that feed Bedford. And then the darker lines are ones that are operated by Pennachuck Water Company, a water system, either fed by Manchester in the north and central, or fed by the Merrimack Village Water District, again for Greenfield Farms, Cabot Preserve area. So zooming in on what we had to do to resolve that cluster was we extended the water line down Back River Road to Smith Road and Green Meadow Road to address those highest contaminant properties. Again, many of those properties stayed on bottled water for over 2 years until that water line was able to be extended last year. And then to address the properties along South River Road, the water lines exist there, but we had so many properties that just weren't connected that those were being, and are currently still being connected to the existing water system that's in the road. I know this isn't probably impossible for anybody in the audience or at home to read, but this is the readings for the last year for Cabot Preserve. So the water coming into Bedford and Greenfield Farms and Cabot Preserve, as I said, the proposed standard is 12. This reading up here is just under 10. This one's just under 12. But for the entire rest of the last year, the readings for that water coming into the Greenfield Farm System and Cabot Preserve exceed the 12 parts per trillion PFOA standard that's proposed. They far lower on the PFOS standard. But so it clearly points out that we have now a new issue to deal with, which is making sure that water coming from Merrimack is treated in some way. These are the readings for the 6 wells in Merrimack. Wells 2 and, well 2 has some readings under 12, but again, earlier last year, they exceeded 12 essentially the entire year. Well 3 is always over 12 parts per trillion for PFOA. Wells 4 and 5 are the most contaminated and have been offline this entire time. Wells 7 and 8 end up being mixed, their water, and so the right-hand column is their mixed water results. And again, we're reading, all these readings are over 12 parts per trillion. So what this tells me is the Merrimack system is going to have treatment on all other wells should this go forward. That will resolve the issue at Greenfield Farms and Cabot Preserve, but what it means, though, is a lot of work that needs to be done just here locally in Bedford to address some of those yellow dots on the map that you saw earlier that did not get water off of Back River Road or Green Meadow. There were yellow dots further into the community and scattered throughout the community. And obviously Manchester, Pennachuck, and Merrimack Village Water District are all going to have to do continued monitoring of all their water and provide treatment. As you probably have seen, some of the articles estimate that statewide this is likely approximately up to $190 million problem for our water systems to solve, and that does not include the cost to municipalities like us who have a transfer station landfill that is potentially polluting our butters' wells beyond these thresholds, which we will have to address. So I think I've said this a number of times over the last several years, is we're still learning and it's still evolving. This is an emergent contaminant, and there's a lot to still work on. I will attend the hearing tomorrow, and we'll see where that goes. It's unclear if the state will take a vote tomorrow or if that will continue into their August meeting. But I can certainly take any questions on PFOA, PFAS, if you have them at this point in time, but I wanted to give you at least a little bit of an update on that.
Rick, any feedback from the NHDES on whether they're going to look at the consent decree?
I do not have any specifics on that, other than I should have put the slide in. It's my understanding that the management zones that were put in place would still allow for us to, or allow the state to pursue St. Gobain to provide treatment, at least within the area that was identified, which extends all the way up to Route 101, which is pretty extensive
Would take
area.
in the yellow and orange dots.
It would take
the
in
majority
all of
of
those
it.
dots except the ones that we're responsible for around the landfill.
Yeah.
But I also believe we'll have much more testing needing to be done now, so the amount of dots on that screen or on that map, I hope will double or triple over the time.
Which was the other thing that I was going to say. We should make that link easy for people to find,
Okay,
again.
okay.
On the homepage, on the banner.
Yeah.
I think the easiest way to get to it currently is through the town manager's page on the website, or on New Hampshire DES website. There is a special link at the very top of their page that will take you to all the data, but I will tell you it's very hard to navigate. But we can make that map more easily available.
Again, I mean,
So
we-
they have not discussed anything on testing?
No, there's been no proposed funding as part of these rules. That's a major concern of the municipal association, who's submitted a letter on behalf of the municipalities, and not specific to Bedford, because we're in the middle here, but there's no funding currently for testing or for solutions or implementing water systems or treatment systems. So that is, I think, going to be a lot of discussion tomorrow at the hearing and into the future. The state has sued major manufacturers of these chemicals, and I believe that will take years for that to be litigated. If it does happen like MTBE was in the past, the state could end up with a fund that we could potentially draw from to help us solve our water system problems, but that's years down the road. Hopefully the legislature will take up at least some funding for testing next year.
Rick, for those folks who live over by the transfer station, can you just maybe explain generally why it is that we have the issue because of the landfill?
Sure. So these compounds, these chemicals, were in everyday products, Gore-Tex, Scotchgard, any water repellent type materials, Teflon. So any of those materials, your carpet that you took up out of your house and brought to the transfer station, brought to the landfill back in the day, it was deposited there. We have a cap over our landfill, but it's not lined underneath. So water can get through, or those chemicals do seep into the ground and then get out into the groundwater. That's what it's shown so far. It's different than the St. Gobain contamination, which came through the air. Ours is really coming directly through the groundwater. There's been some analysis done at landfill in the Portsmouth Greenland area that shows that maybe even the cap itself is what's providing the contamination, that they made a waterproof cap and they would have likely used chemicals that would have repelled water, and it's possible that the caps themselves are causing much of the contamination into the surrounding groundwater. So there's, like I say, there's still a lot of emerging studies and science on this that we have to go through. I believe that study that I referenced in the Seacoast, that water tests above and below the cap actually had higher results above the cap than below it. So. I mean, this is our generation's, Agent Orange or DDT or something, or asbestos. Unfortunately we've done this to ourselves, and these are chemicals that we've created, and again, we're learning the hard way one more time. There are over 4,000 chemicals in this PFAS family of chemicals or compounds. So these are 4 compounds that the state has chosen to regulate. Many of the other states have a 5th that they've also regulated, but the state legislature passed a law a year ago that asked DES to study these 4 compounds only. So I do expect that additional compounds will be added in the future as well. We don't have good testing on our wells anywhere in town on these additional 2 chemicals. We initially were only studying PFOA and PFOS. Those additional compounds on the list, as far as I know, don't have good results or good data for all of our private wells. So we thought we might be getting beyond this when we got the water line done, but it really, we're starting up all over again, and maybe even more intensely and more widespread in the community. Continuing on with just general updates, our pool and splash pad are open. I will say this weekend, we hope everyone comes out to them and makes very good use of them, given the predicted temperatures over the weekend. Saturday, weekend days, it's noon to 5 p.m., and those are the hottest hours. I will also say we will have cooling shelters open this weekend for anybody who needs those. The library is open for a few hours on Saturday, but also the safety complex, police and fire station will be open for anybody who needs a cooling shelter at any point over this heat wave that's coming. Student parking permit time. I know that we've started to get a bunch of questions about this. We continue to follow the same process we've had the last couple of years, which has worked very well. Students were to sign up through the school's lottery system, and then once the school has issued all their permits, they give us all the remaining students who did not get a permit on campus. It's our understanding from the school that we'll have that list available in time to start issuing permits on Monday, August 14th. It's about a week earlier than the last couple of years. For the town permit, you do need $125, a valid New Hampshire license, which is different than the school. This is the one discrepancy or one difference between the school and the town. The town does require you to have a license in order to get a parking permit. It's worked out very well. Last year we had about 30 spaces available to give out after we got the list from the state. Those are again available starting August 14th this year. I'm going to guess we're going to be real close to having a complete list of students from the high school this year. So if you did not get a permit through the state, through the school, you will have one reserved for the first 3 weeks. I believe it's September 7th. If you haven't picked up your permit by September 7th, we would start making those spaces available to other students. You will get notices about this if you haven't picked it up. Our concerts in the park, we had one tonight, and tonight was raining, so whenever there is a Wednesday night concert and it's raining, the concert is in the town hall, so don't feel like they're canceled. Still come on out and come to town hall. The next one is the Windham's Swing Band, and then July 31st is Bel Air's. And you can see we continue through August 21st, again with concerts every Wednesday night, 6 p.m., Bedford Village Common. The Historical Society was here earlier. They didn't mention that they also have a fundraiser coming up this Saturday, July 20th. Again, it's going to be very hot, and this is a car show at the high school on pavement. So come very well prepared for that and bring water. But they always do a great car show. It's $10 to enter a car if you're looking to show off a car, and it's $5 for your carload of people to come in. So for your whole family, you can get in for $5, and that's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. this Saturday at the high school. On July 26th, the town puts together annually a Touch-a-Truck program as part of the library reading program. And this year it's extended an extra hour. So July 26th at the Village Common parking lot from 1 to 3 p.m. It's always a great day, especially the youngest kids. On the 31st, we have a special concert during the day at noon, and it's Judy Pancoast, who's a Grammy Award-winning musician dedicated towards children's activities, and the kids absolutely love her programs. So July 31st at noon, again at the Village Common. And lastly, last update anyways, on Scott Wiggin, Chief Wiggins' retirement is August 1st. If you haven't gotten your tickets, you're still welcome to get them. The entire community is invited to the Manchester Country Club on the 1st, 5 to 8 p.m., and tickets are available at bedfordfirenh.org. August 6th is National Night Out, and the Bedford Fire and Police Departments always celebrate this with a softball game. It's always a lot of fun, starting at 6 p.m. And the last several years, and again this year, we've been joined by WZID, who put on a block party. It's a great community event. We get a great turnout for the block party. So I encourage you to come out and celebrate National Night Out again, August 6th at Slavosky Field in the pool complex for the neighborhood block party, 6 p.m. And I believe my last update is Thursday Theater in August is on August 8th. And this time it's the same movie, both at 2 p.m. and 6:30 p.m., and it's The Public. That's all I have, but I can take any questions if you have any.